Test, test. 1, 2, 3, 4. Test, 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 test.
Okay.
Is it on?
Yeah, it is.
Oh my God. Hi, how are you doing? How many do you want? 2 Michael hellos, or what's this format? What do you want?
I'm just going to ask you some questions.
Okay.
And then you can act like you're talking to me if you want.
Okay.
So the first question I have is...
Oh yeah, sure. I joined the faculty here in 1990, and Mike was already on the faculty, and we were. I think I had gotten involved in Asian American Studies sort of indirectly. I was invited to serve on a search committee, and I didn't really know much about Asian American Studies actually. But I was invited to be on a search committee. I said sure. I think Mike was on that committee. We sort of met then, but for the first time. And but I think later we got involved in some research on race and ethnicity, and had gone to some lectures together, saw each other, and decided to do some work together. So that we kind of got to know each other in that context. But I've known him since probably 1991 or 92, so for a long time.
As far as I can remember, well, it would have been an Asian American Studies meeting, and I don't really remember the exact first time. As far as I can remember, Michael was always in Asian American Studies. He was there before I was, and I think he was at the first meeting I attended.
Well, I met Michael, we were both at the beginning of the Asian American Studies program, back in 1992. But probably I know him better from other areas, where, like he was part of creating a collaborative learning environment, CCLE, and he was in one of my groups, and so I probably know him best from that.
I guess, what first impressions of Michael did I have?
Yeah.
He was a young assistant professor, and everybody was talking about him. So many people knew that he was coming with a particular kind of special Asian American, African American background and perspective. So I knew many people in the university were so intrigued and excited to have not just another Asian Americanist person of color join the community, but also someone who could speak from his own background as far as the intersection between Asian American and African American issues.
I do, actually. I just remembered it. I was just thinking about it. I first met Mike, I believe, on my campus visit to UW-Madison, which would have been back in 2009 when I was first being hired. So, if I recall correctly, I had this breakfast with the Asian American Studies program, and I got there, and there was this table with, like a lot of the Asian American Studies faculty sitting around the table, and I believe I sat down next to Mike. And I, introduced myself, and he, said that he, worked with the Mogridge Center and that they worked on service learning. And as I recall, he looked at me very directly and he said, "Do you know what service learning is?" And I said, well, and actually at the time I think I did not know what service learning was. And so I said, "Well, I'm not really familiar with it, but is it something like this?" And he said, "Yes, that's right. And, can you see what you're doing fitting in with service learning?" So, it was a very good introduction to Mike's kind of directness and focus. But it was a really, I feel like it was a very kind of, it was a very good first encounter because it sort of showed me, kind of how passionate he was about, the kind of work that he did, about service work, about kind of, scholarship that engaged the community, and, but also that he really wasn't, wasn't afraid to sort of put somebody on the spot and sort of say, "Hey, what do you think about this? What's your opinion?" So I always kind of, have liked and respected that about Mike, that he, kind of is, is very passionate and is, very direct and to the point when he wants to know your opinion about something.
Yeah, I was impressed by him. He knew a lot about the field. Asked really good questions in meetings and at talks and things like that. And then when I started to get to know him a little bit better, when we started doing the research, it was, you know, it was apparent that he was an expert in the area. So, and then when I started teaching in the area, he was a really good mentor about how to teach this very sensitive subject matter in the upper Midwest. So that was really great to have him sort of to bounce ideas off, and he'd send me citations and that type of thing. So he was a good mentor to me. Well, any memories? Well, he's very focused and intense. He can be, you know, when we're trying to get something done, a project done. And very curious mind, analytical mind. He'll ask very hard, tough questions about what we're doing. So I remember those kind of moments of kind of being intimidated in some ways, but also seeing the value of what he was trying to get us to do to move us forward in a project or whatever it was, or writing a paper, or we wrote a book together. That was an interesting and good experience. So good memories of working with him and his focus, his intensity, but also he was also good sense of humor and fun to work with.
He was always very interesting and actually kind of reserved in some ways. I do remember talking to him about his research on news coverage of different racial groups and racial conflict. So we had some interests in common that we talked about. I think he's a pretty serious, committed person is the way I view him when I've gotten to know him. And always interested in the well-being of Asian American Studies, as well as his home department, Afro-American Studies. I thought it was really interesting that he always crossed those lines in studying both Black people and Asian people, and that was pretty interesting to me.
Michael is really intense. He was an excellent mentor. He doesn't mince words. He's passionate about things, and he doesn't sort of let you get away with half-baked ideas.
Right.
I found that, he was a person who you should really listen to, because what he says you would want to think about later on.
I would say one of the best things about Michael Thornton is that he is never reticent when something has to be said. When something has to be said, he does it. He says it. And I guess a good example of that was, I was not at the University of Wisconsin-Madison at the time. I was in the state of Michigan. But Michael was able to share with me that there was an anniversary of the Minority Coalition and an anniversary of the Holly Report. And all of the Asian Americans who were involved in PAWA, Pacific Asian Women's Alliance, and myself, we worked really hard on that Asian American dimension and contributing to the Holly Report and the Minority Coalition. Anyway, there was an anniversary here at the UW, and not unlike what happened, unfortunately, during the process of writing the Holly Report and contributing to the Minority Coalition, not unlike what happened then, and it happened again, Asian Americans got forgotten. And so everything we did was not fully recognized in various moments when people would talk about the Holly Report, and apparently it happened at that anniversary. Asian Americans got forgotten. So I wrote to Michael saying, there's another event happening, and can you read this open letter that I wrote from Michigan? So Michael had my copy and was at this other event, again, celebrating the Holly Report. And the person in charge didn't want to hear this Asian American witness. So I think this person in charge said something like, well, we could talk about it later, or oh, maybe you could show it to me later. And here's where Michael's forthrightness really came through. He said in front of everybody, and this was public, this was in front of some people, he said, I'm not asking your permission. I'm going to read this. And so he did. And the words that I wrote were, brothers and sisters, everyone involved who can remember the Minority Coalition, you know, the Asian Americans, we were at every meeting, we were at every protest, we were at every discussion, we were at every write-up, we were at every re-write-up, and we were there. And Michael read that, and I'm so appreciative of his Asian American witness.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing I have really always valued about his presence in the program is that one thing about arriving here was that I found this community of senior faculty who have been committed to the program for a really long time, have supported it with their volunteer labor. Obviously, Mike doesn't have an appointment in Asian American Studies. It's not, necessarily part of his job to do this, but because he and, a number of other faculty have been so committed to the program for a long time, coming in, I saw that there were these scholars who had really kind of made this commitment to the program. And I think Mike's sense of kind of what the importance of Asian American Studies is, what the mission is, but also the kind of sense of real scholarly rigor around the topic, and his understanding that this is an academic field that really needs support, that is this interdisciplinary kind of scholarship that we're all contributing to, but that we kind of need to seriously do the work, and that he was always willing to put in that work and to make that commitment in a way that I think sort of raised the bar for a lot of us as well. I mean, as somebody who had a joint appointment coming in, I had to kind of learn from people like what it meant to support this program and be committed to it, and I think I learned a lot from Mike about that.
Well, that's a good question. I haven't stayed involved in Asian American Studies very much in the last decade or so, so I'm not all that clear about what the department has been going, but I know that Mike has stayed involved, and I think was a proponent of the ethics studies sort of cluster hire, and I suspect he had some impact on that, but I don't think I can speak to that directly about his impact on the Asian American Studies program recently. Although I know that when the program was small in the early '90s, he spent a year as director. He was on that committee as I was, and I think worked hard to keep the program kind of intellectually diversified. He was a sociologist, and he was, I think, promoting the idea that, hey, we need to have social sciences represented in the Asian American Studies program, as well as humanities and even the sciences. So I think that was one of the things that he was successful at doing. On the campus, I know that he's had several leadership positions at the college level, but also campus level. He was the head of the Mortgage Institute for a while, and I think he was very influential in getting service learning more into the mainstream on the campus. And then he himself had taught several service learning courses in Afro and so he was, I think, one of the big early kind of proponents of service learning classes.
I think he's been one of the people who, he's a fellow sociologist, and so one of the people who brought a social science perspective to Asian American Studies and the campus. I think he's been a stalwart on the campus in terms of teaching students and working with people over the years.
Well, I'm not sure that I know much about the other programs growing around him, but I do know that his approach to ethnic studies was extremely effective. I had a student in one of my, I was on a committee, and the student member of the committee, we asked the student, he was an excellent student, how did you get interested in diversity? He was an economics major. And he said, Michael Thornton's class. And so I think in some ways what he did was he wasn't afraid to get the students to be a little uncomfortable at the beginning. It's a very difficult thing for a faculty member to have the students almost dislike you at the beginning. But by the end, with his approach, just asking the difficult questions, but being kind and gentle with them, by the end, they really understood diversity and inclusion, and it makes a lifelong difference. And I'm sure that has had an effect on other programs, what he was able to do.
It has grown, right? I mean, that is the simplest thing to say and the most astounding thing to say, that the Asian American Studies program has grown in terms of the students who have become certificate candidates, the emphases, such as the Hmong American emphases in the program, and the sheer number of people who have joined. It's amazing, the sheer number of people who teach and do research in Asian American Studies. If Amy Ling were still with us, she would truly be so appreciative, and she would be surprised and amazed and pleased. And I think Michael Thornton played such a key role because he was there too, right? I mean, he was there at key moments, and he brought the kind of background that he had as far as trying to build Asian American Studies at other places. He got some very wise advice when he was at Cornell about doing Asian American Studies, in particular institutional settings, where they may not know at all what Asian American Studies is, but it needs to be brought forward. And Michael's mentor at Cornell was Lee, a woman who, I forget what department she was in, but she was very wise as to institutions and how institutions operate. And I think Michael was able to take that kind of mentoring and to adapt it and make it applicable to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So Michael's a key contribution, a key person to remember.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that, one thing that, one thing I perceive about Mike and the way he talks about his experiences doing ethnic studies here at UW is that it's clear that he has the experience of doing that work when it's very lonely, right? When maybe you're the one person in a department who's doing that kind of work, and maybe other people don't get what you're doing or are kind of skeptical about it. And, but the idea of what it means to be very kind of strongly committed to that work and to say, okay, I'm gonna do this, and having that kind of integrity. I think that that's something that I really admire about the way he approaches, approaches the work. And it's been great that I think that over the time that I've been here, I do think it's been possible for people like Mike who have supported this work for a really long time to see, I hope, that the program has really grown, that it's kind of established itself in this way that maybe means that we don't have to feel like we're doing it on our own anymore. And I think that Mike's leadership in being often one of the lonely few that was kind of out there initially, I would like to think that that kind of really paved the way for a lot of us who came later and were able to kind of benefit from the path that he forged.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, he was a big proponent, as I said, always of ethnic studies. One of the things that he and I talked about sometimes was at one point in time I was also head of the Asian American Studies program as he was, and so we had conversations about, well, why can't there be an ethnic studies program at the time, we had 3 distinct programs plus the Afro-Am department. And he was in the Afro-Am department and Asian American Studies. So I think he pushed this idea that there is value in having an ethnic studies unit of some kind, even though that would have its problems in terms of how do you share resources, how do you make decisions, and so forth. But I think he saw the value of having that kind of that level, a unit at a level that kind of connects those programs together. And I think that's the observation that Professor Chang makes is right, that in some sense he was one of the few leading voices in the early 90s about ethnic studies and the importance of ethnic studies, and in a sense that's right, the different programs grew around those leaders, and he was one of those leaders.
So that's an interesting question, because I've always been in and committed to Asian American Studies, but my home department is sociology, and actually my own research has not particularly been ethnic studies. So I'm way more of an outsider to ethnic studies, and I've really appreciated Michael's commitment to the whole field. I've seen him be pretty upset and angry about ethnic studies being marginalized and trivialized over the years. I think he's been a great contributor to holding things together during the lean times, and a great contributor to being there and helping boost it up when some of the resources started flowing back towards it more recently.
So I'm sure that there are many impacts that I'm not aware of, but when he was director for quite a while, he was very efficient, and he was interested in the curriculum. And so he had committees formed to really examine the curriculum and what we were trying to do in Asian Am. And he had a big impact on that. And I think also on the efficiency, not wasting a lot of time for the executive committees. I think he was an excellent mentor also for the faculty, the colleagues. He certainly was a mentor for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm a neuroscientist, so there's a lot to learn. But he's just such a warm person. So, just the marriage between being tough on you and not letting you, get away with half thinking, but together with that warmth. I thought we were going to lose him when he went to Michigan, and then he came back. I was so relieved that he came back. He's had a big impact on the program.
Yeah, Michael is such a good one-on-one person, and Michael is such a good public figure, and he's able to combine both of those roles. One aspect of his specific mentoring is tied to the fact that Michael always knows and remembers that he's a first-generation academic. He's a first-generation academic as far as being a first-generation scholar. He's a first-generation academic as being a first-generation faculty person at a big research university. He's a first-generation academic as being the first in his family to be in this weird world, this really strange world of being an academic. And he knows that first-generation experience, but also first-generation of color experience, Asian American and African American, as far as trying to blaze a trail through this kind of thicket, which is, let's face it, the white university, and the white university that doesn't understand, even though they publicly say they will embrace people of color, but that's where the thicket is. It's tangly, and it's messy, and it's thorny. But Michael Thornton, he's been through that hard, thorny part, but he's able to teach all of us how to walk a little bit better through those thorns. I think Michael's interest in media and Michael's interest in how media perceptions, or rather media routines, represent or pose to represent people of color, That's still so important to know, that's still important to think through, and I think Michael's thinking and research has helped to get us be more clear on those matters. And what I really like about Michael as far as that one-on-one mentoring dimension that he practiced so well is that he brings together different people who have that similar first-gen people of color experience in the academy. And Michael has been trying to develop a research project where first-generation people of color can meet, talk with each other, share their experiences, but also from that we can again develop better pathways for all first generation and then post first generation people of color.
You know, the thing that just came to mind was that you know, a couple of years ago I taught the comparative ethnic studies course, the introduction to comparative ethnic studies, and I had Mike in to you know, do a guest lecture on mass incarceration and about you know, police relationships to minority communities. And it was actually, you know, although I had known Mike for a really long time, it was really one of the first times I'd heard him give like a classroom presentation that really sort of drew on his own knowledge and research. And I was really struck not only by his, you know, his breadth of knowledge, obviously, but also the kind of passion and political engagement with which he sort of talked about the material. You know, I think sometimes when you first get to know Mike, he can seem like someone who's a bit more kind of reserved and quiet, but the, you know, the kind of Mike I saw that day was one who was really like, you know, okay, like here are the facts you need to know about police relationships and race and racism. You know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to, you know, varnish it over for you. Like, these are the hard facts. You know, these are the facts of how police are socialized in this way. These are the facts of, you know, how minority communities are disproportionately impacted, and, you know, these are things that are really important for you to know, and I'm gonna, you know, kind of put it out there for you. So I really saw kind of that day like, wow, you know, like this is what it really means to be a kind of politically committed scholar, to somebody who, to be somebody who's able to take those kinds of facts, that hard research, and put it in front of students in a really powerful way that, and I think a lot of students were really struck by that. I think a lot of them comment to me afterwards sort of how much of an impact that had on them. So, you know, I think his ability to kind of bring together research and teaching, but also kind of service to a community, and, you know, to do all of those things, I think that's something that's unique about him.
Mike, I just wanted to say thank you for your friendship in the early years that we were here. I was sort of flailing around with race and ethnicity studies and trying to teach it and do race, and you took me under your wing, and I really appreciate that. I'll never forget it. So good luck to you in your retirement. I'm sure you're going to have a wonderful time with your post-academic career.
Hey, Michael. Well, you know that I retired last year, sort of. I'm still on campus a lot. I'm not quite sure what your plans are going to be, but I wish you all the best in your retirement. I hope you have a good time. And it's certainly a lot of fun being more relaxed in your schedule and being able to choose what you do. So I hope you have a great time.
Yeah. So, Michael, you once asked me what it was like to be retired, and I told you that I loved it, that it's the best thing to happen, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy retirement too, and you're going to do great things. There's a lot more to do other than the academics, and I hope that we get to see each other more often now that you're retired, and go blue.
Michael, I think when I was in grad school, you said to me, hey, let's play racquetball. And we never did play racquetball. And they tore down the surf, you know, it was at the surf. And that really would have been a good place to not only play racquetball and me being so goofy, constantly miss the ball, but I think knowing you, it would have been a good place to also talk about, you know, issues, research, life. And so, in retrospect, I really miss that, Michael, and who knows, I don't know if they'll ever rebuild any kind of physical education or workout place here at this campus. But maybe either racquetball or a good Asian American dinner.
Well, Mike, congratulations, and it's been a real honor to work with you for all of these years. I will definitely miss you, the program will definitely miss you, but I hope that we'll carry on the work that you have pioneered here, and hope you'll always be part of this community.
Hi, Mike. This is Cindy. I'm so sorry we don't get a chance to actually celebrate with you in person, especially because it meant so much for me to be able to do that. I think for me personally, you've been such a steady presence in my academic life, a support system that I had relied on. And you've done so much for the program. And you're somebody that I absolutely admire and look up to because you've held it together these many years. You still care. You show up, you contribute, you care about your students, you care about their learning after all these years. And we all understand how much we weather through everything. And I'm just so grateful to have had the chance to know you. These, like, for me, at least for 14 years, the most absolutely precious thing for me is I think my first major service was on that ethnic studies subcommittee, which was so intense. And I couldn't have been luckier to have you there and folks like Tim and everybody, because there's no way I could have done that. And to know that you were in that committee, in the meeting, and that when I went in, there were people there that were going to be supportive. It meant the world to me. So I am so happy for you that you get to begin this new, new chapter of life and retire. You'll be so dearly missed. And thank you so much for being with Asian American Studies all these years. And I hope we do enough to really support you. And hopefully we do our best to honor and celebrate everything that you've done for us. Again, I wish I could do this in person, but hopefully this counts for something. I'll miss you terribly.